need 2 of Dollar Tree's acrylic boards and 2 of Dollar Tree's large palettes to create this decorative miniature tabletop dry erase board. These things, if you have never taken the clear film off of these, it's not easy. Feel free to let me know how you're doing it in the comments. I take this little Cricut tool, peel back a corner, and then get the rest off. I love the fact that you can take your little dry erase markers and write on these acrylic boards and then just erase them and reuse them. I wanted to create something so we could have little decorative pieces to keep reminders around the house or next to your desk or your kid's bed or your side of the bed, you know, whatever. But we're going to get a little decorative with it and add us some TDS dry rub on transfers into the corners. You can take this idea and remix it utilizing whatever you would like on here, but I want to also show you how you're able to reuse this over and over and over again and just switch it on up with this idea. I'm taking my transfers and applying them to one of the acrylic boards. I'm just going to use one in each corner. Obviously use as many as you would like. Leaving this blank would also be a great idea too. You can have more space to write on, but I'm giving you the decorative idea, and take the idea and remix it to whatever works best for you at your home. Here's where the second board comes in. You're going to place it right over top of the board you popped the transfers on. And then we're going to smoosh it on, and these fit really snugly in between the palette spaces. You're going to need to bring on in your hammer, give it a little tappity tap, and they will stay without any glue, allowing you the ability to switch these out as the season comes or your mood changes with the decor in your home. Need 2 of these Dollar Tree mini wood pallets so we can create a set of Tealight sconces. And grab 2 of these fancy schmancy frames from Dollar Tree while you're at it. I love having these in my stash. We're gonna take some of my Waverly chalk paint in the ink color and a pouncer and just tappity tap 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 all over these frames. I do not want full coverage. This is the color scheme I'm going for with this today. And I am taking that pouncer and that same paint and going over the palettes. Remix this idea with what works best for your home and your color palette. This is just something I had in mind that I've been wanting to try since I've painted these beautiful frames that Dollar Tree has, several different colors. On the back of the frames, I'm going to take some of my Dixie Belle gold gilding wax, just do a light dusting. This is the part that we're going to attach the palettes to. If you don't have this stuff, no worries. You can grab some gold metallic paint and get the same result. Just make sure your brush is fairly dry as you're going over, so you do have a little bit of that black shining through, or whatever your main color is. I'm using 2 of Dollar Tree's Tealights because they have this little lip at the top and they're perfect for this project. You can use whatever Tealight you would like. I recommend whatever it is having a little bit of a lip. You're going to put your piece together so it looks like this. Once you have it completely assembled, you'll see here that the little Tealight sits right there. To attach the palettes, I'm going to be using some Titebond wood glue and some hot glue. Just putting a little bit on the edges of the palettes and then pressing them gently on the back of the inside of these frames and allowing this to dry. You want to make sure it's dry before you start the next process, because we're going to have to poke holes around the palettes. For our attachment, I'm just going to use some of this jewelry gauge wire that I keep in my stash. This stuff is really manipulatable and it's kind of tough. So I use a pair of needle nose pliers to help me finagle it around to keep it in place when I'm doing different things. as you can see here, it holds that Tealight perfectly, just settles right on top of that gauge wire. I used a little tool just to kind of pop holes through the back and then fed that wire through until the Tealight caught and held in place. And then I just bent them on each side, and there are several different ways you can do this. For the sake of time, I just grabbed some painter's tape, which you'll see me do in just a second, and put right over the ends. You could also grab some brown craft paper, put on the back and tape it or glue it down. This is going to help prevent any scratching on your wall. And then add whatever hanger you would like. You could also use the hanger that is already on the frames and put them on your wall. I did also have some of that black jewelry gauge wire and used that in one of these sconces so you could see what it looked like with the black wire. And I took some of my gilding wax and painted over the silver wire, making it gold so it matched the rest of the frames. Something about all the fall things on top of this lantern just called me to it. I'm like, we can definitely do this using these beautiful wood pieces from Dollar Tree and a palette. We're going to need a palette. I mean, you don't have to use a palette, but I'm going to use a palette. And these little wood dowel pieces that are kind of like in a rectangular shape I pick up from Home Depot. You could absolutely use tumbling blocks for this section if you want to. I just had these dowels and thought it would be easier to have just one solid piece instead of having to put the tumbling blocks together. It just really took out a step. I then measured them to size to what I felt would make sense for the decor piece. You absolutely make this as large as you would like. I had some decorative trim pieces that I picked up from Home Depot in my stash and decided to cut them down to size to go in the front of these just to add a little bit of a high-end decorative touch. Since I've been using this wood glue, clamping stuff together for like 30 minutes gives me a nice hold and I'm able to keep on creating. So once they were dry, I then put a little bit of hot glue onto the bottom to get these to hold. However, when I was doing this one, I let it go and did not take into account that we still had the clamps on there. So people, here's why I chose the palette. It literally fits right on top of here just perfectly. The ends of these square dowels settle right in the nooks of where the palette is. It makes for a perfect flat top to this lantern so we can attach a floral foam on here. If you want to put a normal lantern top, you go right ahead. This just made sense to me. I then took some of my wood glue and painted around all the creases on all the connection points. So this way we had a really good hold. I applied a little bit of weight to the top of it and then let this dry for 3 hours. You can paint this whatever color you would like or stain it. I'm using antique Waverly wax and a baby wipe and just applying a nice thin layer to the entire piece. The cool thing I felt about this build is since I used a palette on top, I could just take a little bit of tacky glue, put the floral foam on, and when that floral foam has served its purpose, I could easily shave it off and replace it as necessary. This way, this could be reused throughout the year as often as you would like, and you're not messing up a really nice top that you might have put on here, especially since we're not going to see it anyway. And need 6 of these to start out with. but we'll need 8 total. For this large wall shelf, you can remix the colors to fit whatever decor you would like. I'm going to keep my neutral with a little bit of a modern touch, and we're going to start off by just flipping them over onto their backside. For the attachments, I'm going to start off by taking some Titebond Quick and Thick and putting it in all the little seams where these pallets are going to be attached to each other. When I was happy with how the first 4 were attached, I then brought on in the stapler. Now we're gonna need some extra attachments, just not some hot glue or some, wood glue. We need them staples. However, I wish I could make this stuff up. The stapler! It really is a stapler. I love the stapler though. But look at that, 2 at a time, come on. If that does ever happen to you, just grab a little hammer and just a little tappity tap 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 and it'll go right on down. I let that dry for about 30 minutes and then grabbed 2 more pallets. Added some more wood glue to the bottom here. And people, I'm going to be so real with y'all. I did not measure this, but you can see that I am putting staples up through. I eyeballed it, I wung it, and I wung it so good. I rarely ever wing stuff enough that I don't have staples popping through where I don't want them. But for this one, I did pretty good. Then I took some more of that wood glue and put on the sections of the bottom that I knew were going to touch these other 2 pallets. So this way we had more pallets underneath the shelf lip that we created. I even grabbed a little paintbrush and took a minute just kind of painting it on there. And I let that dry for about 30 minutes. And then I went and found my miter shears and brought them on in. So we could cut down these square dowel rods I picked up from Hobby Lobby. Now you can get these types of things at Walmart and Home Depot. And if you don't want to use these, you could absolutely take some towering tumbling blocks and line your shelf on the edges with those. But as you see here, it's just simpler for me to kind of take this one whole piece and then chop it down where I need to be able to attach it. And believe it or not, people, these particular dowels at Hobby Lobby were only 99 cents. Now they have different sizes, so the prices range, but for 99 cents I grabbed them joints. Plus they're going to work perfectly for a frame, and for that modern touch, I'm just giving them a nice coat of black paint. To attach the frame, I just used some more of that wood glue with a little bit of hot glue for an instant hold, and grabbed my sawtooth hammer and hangers, and I do believe these are down in my Amazon affiliate link in the description box, to hammer in on the back so this way we could hang our beautiful shelf on the wall. Not 1, but 2 for this project. And you can paint them one up if you want, but I'm going to leave my neutral, and we're going to also need to make sure we have 2 of Dollar Tree's wire baskets in this style. And I'm not calling this a craft or DIY necessarily, so to say specifically, but it kind of is. Or so it's kind of just a way for you to style the pallets with the basket. They literally fit in here absolutely perfectly. You could glue these or you could zip tie them down, completely up to you. You could even put one on the bottom and attach them together this way. That way you have a little bit more stability. And people, as simple as this idea is, there's really so much that you could do with it. This would look amazing in a bathroom, just putting some decorative towels in there, or you could even take some dishwasher safe Mod Podge and paint over the pallets. So you can put your soaps on top of here, whether it's in the kitchen or in the bathroom, so it will protect your wood and give you a nice little oomph to your space. If you're anything like me, you have these Dollar Tree wood pallets in your stash, and you also have bits of this particular palette, or pieces where you've messed up and they're just kind of sitting around. You don't want to throw them away and you don't know what to use them for. So I want to show you a cool way that you can kind of repurpose them to create one piece of home decor. You're going to cut them all down so this way they look very cohesive, and then space them apart as if they're all one piece. Take some wood glue and some hot glue, a couple of popsicle sticks, and just attach everything, leaving those gaps so this way you can't tell where one ends and one starts. When I had all of them on there, I then took some single popsicle sticks that were not cut into bits, added more hot glue and wood glue over top the bits, and allowed that to dry. So this way everything was on there really well. I'm going to paint my piece using these 3 colors. Feel free to paint yours whatever color you would like, or to stain it whatever color you would like. Again, make this as big as you would like, or take several of these, glue them together like this, and then attach them sideways for an even wider piece. There's so many different ways that you could put these extra bits together to repurpose them so you don't have to throw anything away. I decided to just grab some florals and take some twine and wrap them all around the bottom. You could use this for several different things. I just decided to use mine as a little floral holder piece. I took a napkin that I had in my stash, this little decorative napkin, super pretty, and I cut it down into pieces, just kind of wrapped it around, and I also glued this down. If you don't want to glue anything down onto your piece, you don't have to. You could use some floral wire and just attach it like that. This is just what worked best for me. This is super simple to do, and it gives a really high-end feel. Such a great way to reuse those palette bits you have sitting around in your stash. We're going to need 4 of these pallets for this wire basket hanging storage piece. We're going to start off by removing the pesky tags on the back because we're not going to need those. And then I'm grabbing my little spritzer so I can wet this down. I have painted hundreds of pallets at this point. I've made so many projects. And one thing I've learned is that wetting the pallets or even immersing them in a little tin with water and paint, it gets in all the crevices if you don't have the time or the correct weather to be outside spray painting. So I like to add a little bit of water to these joints, grab my paint color, and everything just goes along really smoothly. Or just paint them regularly. Do you? Don't let me tell you how to paint your palettes. This is just what works best for me. I let the pieces completely dry and then started to arrange them on top of one another like this. And you can make as many of these as you want. You'll see how cool this idea is, and you can really do a lot with it and make several of these if you want, or one large one. You will need to pick these wire baskets up from Dollar Tree or wherever store has some cute little wire baskets that are inexpensive, but the size of these are absolutely perfect. I'm gonna need 2 for my storage organizer, and we're gonna have to also make sure this is really, really sturdy. So whatever we're plopping in our baskets, it holds up as it's hanging on the wall. So I flipped our pieces over in the same position we had them and then grabbed some popsicle sticks. Now, I took a second arranging them and realized that they were a little bit larger and didn't necessarily go over the creases in the sections that I wanted. So I just grabbed my scissors and cut them suckers down. Now it's time to bring in my favorite wood glue to apply on here so we have a nice long lasting hold. And then when I was done with the placement of that, I brought in the hot glue gun so we could get a quick and immediate hold on these popsicle sticks down in the placement so I could carry on continuing to make this project. And I want to cut real quick to a quick little craft hack. If your glue stick is running out in your glue gun and you did not know about this, heat up the end of one of your new glue sticks with a little smoosh of glue and then insert it in the back so this way it glues to the old stick and allows you a continuous flow of hot glue without having to hold on to the back of the new stick. You're welcome. Now it's time to bring in the stapler because it's not enough that we shoved hot glue and wood glue on this sucker. We need to put some staples on here as well. This is just going to make sure that if you put something that has weight on this, that under no circumstances are the pallets going to come apart. I mean, seriously, there's not much worse than entertaining some people when you're a crafter and then the crafts you have around the house just fall apart. I'm choosing to use sawtooth hammer and hangers for this next part. You can grab these off Amazon. I'm pretty sure I have these linked in my affiliate link down in the description box. You could absolutely use hooks of any kind to just kind of put in here and then hang the baskets or some zip ties. I felt like these were going to be the best for what I was looking to use this piece for, making sure it was sturdy. Now we're going to need to bring in my wonky hammer. That's what I like to call this thing. It is wonky, right? Like I know people tell me what it is all the time when I'm like, I don't know what it is, but I can never remember. Like horrible at it. Anyhow, look at how perfect these baskets fit on here. Seriously, like look at the wire. It literally matches up to the size of the pallets. I love this. These also are perfect for fitting right inside the creases of the pallets. And the hammer tooth hangers, they fit gingerly over top of the gap, ensuring that our wire basket is not going to pop out here. I decided that I wanted to take a little bit of chalk paint and go over these hangers just so this way they weren't sticking out silver like a sore thumb. You thought I'm running out of palette ideas, I'm here to prove you wrong. And in case you're tired of me saying that, I don't really care. I'm going to keep saying it. Started off this palette trinket box by clipping one of these pallets in half, and I use these little wire clippers I picked up from Hobby Lobby. Then I cut another one, not the same one, another one so I could use the center pieces. I use my jigsaw for this. You guys could use a miter box. That would work just fine as well. Just measure it, make sure they fit in there. I got these little brackets from Home Depot because we are going to ply them so that they can open and close our lid. This was a little painstaking, people. I am not going to lie. It's tiny. And I ran into this little, I don't know what it is, but I was unhappy. I realized I had to make something for these screws to grab onto because they would go straight through the pallet and then poke out extremely bad on the sides. So I hot glued and Gorilla Glued. Love Gorilla Glue Gel. I love Gorilla Glue Gel. and put this on there. I let it dry, and now you can see that once I put these screws in here, they're going to have something to grab onto, and they're not going to just be sticking out the back of the pallet. If you go to do this, make sure you drill them in slowly, because if you do it too fast, it will split through the whole piece quickly. I will show you here. I kind of did that. So learn from my mistakes. So see, it started there, and I was like, oh, Brandy, oh, slow it down. And I ended up doing it way too much. Look at that one. Just split completely through. I just left it. I was like, I'm not going to worry about it. Nobody's going to see this. It's my Trinket box. I'm holding on to it. But be gentle when you're screwing them in, and that won't happen to you. I'm using, now you can use whatever you want. I know Gorilla Glue gel is a beast when it comes to holding stuff together. I did a Try It Tuesday at the beginning of the year. It's a series I run, and I tested that gel, and it's not going anywhere. So I'm confident that this is going to be very sturdy. When you're doing this, you should have a smaller piece, and you want to put that in your bottom. And then you should have one that's a little bit longer. Measure it so it fits in there snugly, so that your top piece is literally snugged in there on the ends, so you don't have to hold or press it. Like, so your bottom piece will be cut a little bit short, and your top piece will be cut a little bit long. And again, once you have this put together, you can decorate it however you want. This is how I rolled with it, people. This is my example. And I did not care for the gaps here. You could completely leave it like this. There's nothing wrong with it. It's fine. But I had to be extra. So I started taking some pieces. Here's a popsicle stick. I'm just trimming it and gluing them to the side. I spared you the spray painting on this one. You're welcome. But it's just some lavender spray paint, 2 times Rust-Oleum, you know, that's my stuff. And then I started with my clay and put it in a Prima mold. And this clay, I tell you what, I've been using this other stuff for quite some time and just started using this. This stuff is so easy to work with. Oh my God. I can't even express to you all. If you're going to use some clay, this stuff is like, oh my gosh. It is so easy to work with. It's unbelievable. I am taking wood glue and then attaching this, pressing it gently, trying not to get little fingerprints in it. And then I am going to make some little accents for the top once I did the whole trim around the sides. I like using wood glue for this, and you're welcome to use I would not use hot glue. That is not a good idea in my opinion. You do you. I will support your bad decisions. But anyhow, I also think Gorilla Glue gel would be just fine. I picked out some little trinkets. I purchased these from Amazon and fit it in the clay and then pulled it out, and of course squeezed way too much out of the Gorilla Glue gel and then placed it in the center. I let all of this dry overnight and then came back the next day, mixed up some of my plaid apple barrel paints to get this beautiful color, and we're going to now work on the painting process. So this is my paper. This is my paper decoupage. And I picked up this paper from Hobby Lobby for $1.99. It was not on sale. It makes me want to cry. But I cut it in half and made sure that it went in the center of these. I didn't want it going all the way to the edge. You'll see see how it's on here. I didn't want it going all the way to the edge. I wanted to be able to see that purple. And then here is my paper for the top, my Tim Holtz paper, and we are going to just put this on the top. And I do put the paper slightly over the edges on the top, so this way that the top looks like it's one cohesive piece. And this stuff is so easy to use. Some more Tim Holtz. I can't help myself. And I literally feel like I'm in love with all of this stuff. Do not use a hot glue gun for this, okay? Learn from me. It peeled right off, okay? It peeled right off. I went and I didn't show you, but I had to go back and use my Gorilla Glue gel. I'm just being real with y'all, okay? I'm not trying to, sugarcoat this. Don't make the mistakes that I'm making. Do it right. Now, the little piece, for whatever reason, that tree, it stayed on there with the hot glue, but that other piece did not. It came right off. You can use an X-Acto knife to take this off, or you can use some sandpaper, whatever you feel comfortable using. I like to go over this and take some Mod Podge to get any little fraying really kind of nailed down so it looks nice. And then when I was all finished, I started to kind of dirty up the piece with my paint and my apple barrel mixture, and also went in with some antique Waverly wax to get that dirty brown. I like to call it dirty brown in there, but kind of looks like a little bit of, anyhow. And then we're going to go over it with some gilding wax to add just a little bit of shine to this. You're in Dollar Tree, head on over to the Crafter Square section and pick up some mini pallets. And grab 2 of these little arrow pieces as well. We're going to be making an outdoor utensil basket, so we're going to need 3 pallets and 2 of these. To get started, we're going to need to bring on in our drill. We're going to need to pop a hole in the top of our little arrow pieces, so make sure you grab a drill bit that is larger than the dowel that we're going to use to create a handle to be able to move this around easily as we're setting it up with our utensils outside or wherever you want to use it in your home. Whenever you go to drill a hole in a piece of wood, it's always good to have an extra piece of wood to brace, 1, so you don't put a hole in the table, and 2, so you don't have a bunch of split wood. However, don't follow my directions and trust me on things like this, because I still put holes in tables. Oh my god. I drilled a hole through the table anyway. Look at it. On my table. I know, I should have used a thicker piece of wood. Shoulda, woulda, coulda. I removed all the extra little bits off our arrows so we could use some painter's tape to cover up them holes and use some spackling to fill it in. We're going to turn these into little houses, and I'm just smooshing a bit in here and scraping off the excess and then sanding down whatever's left once it dries. When it's dry, I grab some of my Waverly chalk paint in the sandstone color along with my water bottle and gave everything a little spritz to put a layer of paint on here. I've shared this tip before, but in case you've never painted Dollar Tree's wood pallets, I've painted hundreds of them, and it's always easier to get in them grooves and not use a ton of paint if you spray them down or even dunk them down in a tin. I only put 1 coat of the paint on here, and now it's time to get a little artsy fartsy. You could absolutely go about creating your houses any which way you would like. If you want to use stencils, you go right ahead. I decided to just hand paint a door on here and then hand paint some little eclectic designs on the top for a roof. Now, it's not for everybody and the design won't be for everybody, but this was just how I went about it. I use stencils all the time. I don't always do free-handed little pieces of art, and it's not perfect, but just to show you guys that sometimes you can just get creative using a paintbrush and a dotting tool. When I was all done with that, I grabbed my Type Bond Quick and Thick and my hot glue gun to start attaching everything. I will tell you that it's best to start with the arrows or your little houses and put them on the ends first. I did attempt to put the pallets on the sides first and quickly realized that I couldn't smush my houses in place. So if you are mindful of your placement when you're putting the little arrows or your houses on the ends, you can leave just enough to be able to smush those pallets right in place. That one pallet you're using as the base has enough room so it all fits. Next, we're going to need to bring on in the miter shears so we can cut our dowel down to size. Now, creating your dowel, it's going to depend on you. If you want to leave extra overhang, you could. I wouldn't mind to fit just perfectly inside the center. So that's all I did. And feel free to paint yours up if you want and pop a sealer on here if you would like. For this tabletop palette vase, we're going to need 2 of the long pallets, a base, and grab some napkins while you're at it. I landed on these 2 pieces right here. I know it looks funny right now, but we're going to piece them together. I love the little frog and the mushroom and the idea of them saying welcome, like sitting on a desk piece, you know, what little greenery pieces coming out. And I knew that if I just took my time doing this and added a little bit of patience, we would get to where I got to eventually. I've done this so many times over the years, and I love to give people inspiration that if you see one napkin, you can sometimes use 2, 3, 4, 5 napkins to piece together one decorative piece. And for this one, we're going to be using those 2 along with this medium to decoupage these on here using my TDS artist brushes. These are in fan style. They're perfect for decoupage. We're going to use the iron-on method to apply both of these napkins, and I'm going to need to put several layers of this medium on here so we have a nice thick base. Now, this stuff dries really, really quick, and it's slightly thinner than Mod Podge. If I was using Mod Podge, I would do one thick layer and allow it to sit and dry for a couple hours. This stuff dries quick, and then I do 2 or 3 layers. Just a little tip. No matter how much I tried, that welcome was not going to fit on here the way I want it. So I grabbed some large popsicle sticks. I know some of you call them tongue depressors. I'm going to call them what I want, and you can write what you want in the comments, and I'm going to ignore you. I'm from Baltimore, and I say zinc and water too, just FYI. Now, anyhow, we're going to cut this down to size so this way our napkin fits right on top that popsicle stick and paint it up white so we have a nice base to see that welcome perfectly that we cut down from the napkin. While that's all drying, now it's time to bring on in our iron so we can start piecing together our napkin bits. I like to turn this all the way up on the 3rd notch, and people, you can absolutely use whatever iron you would like for this. I keep this little sucker right next to my craft station, and it's what I have on hand, and it's what I use. Make sure to get you some parchment paper so it helps prevent any sticking onto your iron. Whenever you're doing something like this and you're not sure where you're putting your pieces, remember that that medium is dry. And don't be afraid to take your time cutting down everything purposefully and even trimming it completely apart like you're going to see me do here, and resituate the napkin so this way it fits, covering where you need it to fit. There are a lot of times when I do stuff like this, and I know they're just little crafts, it's not really a big deal, but for those of us that resell or give things like this as gifts, and this would make a perfect gift around a holiday. Maybe not this exact design, but you can take the idea and remix it, utilizing whatever napkins you would like and whatever decor style you would like. So I want you to see that if you see 2 or 3 napkins, don't be afraid to pick them suckers up and cut them down and make them fit onto whatever you're doing. Even if you gotta grab some popsicle sticks and make it like there's a little added sign on something, it'll all work itself out. There are many different ways that you can trim off the excess napkin, but it's been my experience to just take an X-Acto knife and cut down the centers and then go in with your sandpaper and shave down any excess. To attach those popsicle sticks, I used some of my Quick and Thick Type-On wood glue and then proceeded to decoupage the little welcome piece right on top. I grabbed another one of the same pallets and glued them right on the ends and attached them together. And then I put some glue right on the bottom to attach to our base. Since we had our little frog on here with the mushroom, I added some of, I call this grass. I don't know what you call it, but I picked it up from Dollar Tree and I thought it looked just perfect in here. Next time you're in Dollar Tree, head on over to their craft or squares section and grab some of these little wood pallets. Now we're going to need 4 of them for this project. We're going to be creating a decoupaged wood centerpiece. You'll be able to fit a piece of glass in this or floral foam. We're going to need to put a nice coat of white paint, so this way our design pops over top of the pallets. I'm using a little bit of my water and my spray bottle to give it a little spritzy spritz. It just helps me move the paint around on these pallets and get in all those little grooves easier. And then when the paint is dry, we're going to need to put a layer of medium on here. Now I'm going to use some good old Mod Podge to do this iron on method. Feel free to use whatever works best for you. For the decoupage portion, I'm going to be using some of my TDS Rice Paper. This is A4 in size. This stuff is super thin. It's a little fibrous and it's really easy to use. Absolutely take this idea and remix it using whatever you would like. This is just what I'm rolling with. To apply the Mod Podge, I'm going to be using some of my TDS artist brushes. These are perfect for decoupage. I'm going to use them to spread a nice healthy layer of Mod Podge around and try not to get grossed out. Oh my god. Why did there have to be a booger in it? Ew, oh god. Things that literally just make me want to shrivel up and gag. Anyhow, I used the Mod Podge that was not gross and the fan brushes to spread out a nice thick juicy layer all over the top of these pallets. The struggle is always waiting for them to dry. I like to do that naturally and not rush the process with a heat gun, and this can take a few hours. When that's all done, it's time to bring on in the iron, and I like to set mine on the highest setting. You do not have to use one of these irons for this. Use whatever iron you would like. Make sure to grab you a piece of parchment paper. Yes, parchment paper, not wax paper. Parchment paper is for heat, wax is for sticking. Plus, wax paper has that waxy residue. Parchment paper does not, okay? This is going to help protect your piece, along with allow that iron to get nice and hot and help that Mod Podge melt in to whatever you're ironing on. And a good rule of thumb is to pick your piece up and check all around the edges. I do this by just tugging a little bit and making sure that everything's attached. For these pallets, I like to grab my X-Acto knife and then trim down the excess in between the pallets and around the edges. You can absolutely remove your napkins or your decoupage paper or your rice paper, however you would like. I have done hundreds of pallet DIY projects over the years, and this to me is the easiest to not mess up your piece. And then I will go around the edges, smoothing everything out with my little finger sander. When I was all done, I grabbed my Type-On wood glue and added around the edges and attached the pieces. Another cool idea would be to add a bottom to this if you would like. I've done a different variation of this project with a bottom. You could put some twine or some ribbon around the middle. So many different ways that you can transform this and remix it into something that fits in your home with your decor. I'm always looking for new ideas for Dollar Tree's wood pallets. I'm also always looking for new ways to use some upcycled glass. So we're going to take 3 of these wood pallets and turn them into floral wall decor. And to do that, we're going to need to bring on in the miter shears. We're going to need to use this to cut down these pallets into really just into 2 pieces. So we can add 2 pieces onto the end of one of each of the pallets, if that makes sense. You'll see what I'm talking about in a second. Let's roll on. I'm cutting down some little popsicle bits so this way we can use them as a brace to hold those pallets together that we cut down. You can use whatever you would like. To attach them, I'm going to be using some Type-On Quick and Thick and some hot glue. Gonna smush them both in here, not overlapping them, and then allow this to dry completely before we move on to the next part. So if you want your pallets to actually become a square, this is what it's going to take. I'm going to paint up these glass pieces. You could absolutely leave them clear if you would like. I'm going to grab some of my Waverly chalk paint in the ink color and tappity tap 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 with a pouncer all over them. I applied 2 full coats to each piece. We're going to take these squares and make them diamonds, kind of. Mostly. That's how we're going to put the hangers on the back, okay? This is how I also decided. This is about as measurement-y as you're ever going to see me get, people. I know you don't, I usually wing it, but look at me. I got the ruler here. I measured it out, found a spot. Pretty level too. I'm pretty proud of myself. Next, I grabbed my favorite hammer in hooks. These are little sawtooth hammer in hooks. They're really easy to use. You just bring on in your little hammer, and before I get a whole bunch of comments going, Brandy, where did you get that hammer? Target, in the Bullseye Playground. And it was last year, people, so I can't promise if you go running there now that you're gonna find it. Okay, it's super cute. I know, don't hate on me. Anyhow, this is how easy it is. Just a little tappity tap and it's in there. Next, we're gonna grab some Dollar Tree metal ribbon. And I know many of you struggle finding this, so if you can't find it at Dollar Tree, you can also grab some at Hobby Lobby if you got a Hobby Lobby local to you. But I mean, really use whatever you would like for this. I'm using this as basically the hanger for these. Measure them down to size, wrap them around the glass, and if you wrap them snug enough, this is not my first rodeo with this, I've done this with cans and several different glass pieces, they hold as long as the metal is tight. And we're going to call on in the stapler so we can attach these with some hot glue and make sure that they're on there really, really well. I am so happy with how amazing these turned out. What a great way to put to use some of those old glass pieces you got laying around your house. And the wood pallets too. For this project, we're going to turn these 3 larger pallets into a paper towel holder. I know, people, just listen, roll on with me. Let's attach these 3 pieces together using a popsicle stick. Add a little bit of hot glue, a little bit of Type-On Quick and Thick, and allow this to dry for several hours. Then I grabbed my Waverly white chalk paint. Obviously, paint yours whatever color you would like. I'm going for that vintagey farmhouse vibe with this, so white worked for me. And then you're going to need a dowel, people. If you have a circle one, use that. I didn't, so I grabbed this large square one I had picked up a while back that was in my stash from Hobby Lobby, and I brought on in the miter shears. Because this was pretty long, we had to cut it down to size. Leave yourself just enough overhang so this way we can put it through our paper towel holder And to do that, I'm going to cut down some burlap into strips. We really just need 2 strips for this. You could use regular fabric if you would like. And then it's time to bring on in the stapler. I'm bringing the whole family in on this project, okay? The whole family. Say hi to Fred. On each end of the pallets, I attached the burlap strips. I added a couple staples, and then to cover up those staples, I'm going to take that tight bond and put a little dab in there with some of these vintage buttons just to cover them up. And I do want to point out, in case you go to make this at home, you will notice that the burlap strips are kind of out to the side. This is because we need to make sure that there's enough room for our paper towel roll to be able to move. If I would have did them straight down with just having 3 of the wood pallets, it would have rubbed on the side and been difficult to pull off any extra. I decided to grab my TDS dry rub-on transfers and put a couple sections on the top of just the writing. I felt like they would add the perfect vintagey farmhouse touch. Now you'll notice that after I rub these on, I come back in with some scissors, and that's because these transfers are pretty sticky, and I had the sections of the words were completely stuck together still. So the scissors allowed me to cut the little sections down, and then I used the end of a paintbrush and my finger to just smooth them down on the sides. I did seal over this with a light amount of Mod Podge, added a floral foam piece in the center with some floral pieces, and I absolutely love how this piece turned out. It's such a creative way to use these Dollar Tree wood pallets. Down these 1x3s, and I did take a second to show you the measurements real quick in case you want to recreate this for yourself. You could use a miter box to do this. No heavy tools are required. You will need 3 pallets as well, and then attach the pallets with wood glue and hot glue to accomplish those bonds for your little piece of wood that you're going to put on the sides here. Now if you don't want to use this and you just want to hot glue it, more power to you, but I will take no responsibility if it falls apart on you, okay, because you were warned. See how the bottom of the wood block comes down to the bottom? There's a little bit of space at the top. If you want to cut your block the opposite way, like make it a little bit longer and then just kind of flip it, that would work too. I like the look of the wood this way, so that's why I did it this way. And that tiny little gap at the top there, like, no one's gonna care. This thing is so cute, and you could just really put it anywhere. Just absolutely loved how this turned out. I did make sure to put all the glue on first before attaching the last piece on both sides, and you're going to want to hold it for a second to let that hot glue set in, because once you go to attach this to the bottom piece, which is that palette we have over here, you're going to use mostly wood glue, so that way you know that if you drop this thing or whatever, it's going to hold. So making sure the top piece is well held together before you put this on here, because you're only putting little bits of wood or hot glue in the corners just to, you know, grab it initially. And here's me showing you like how I missed with the wood glue. Wasn't a big deal. I just took a paintbrush and kind of smooshed the wood glue in up against the pallets, and then I let this dry overnight. For this part, you're going to need some joint compound and whatever color paint you want. I'm using black, and we're going to just mix the two together, and that's it. We're just going to create a colored raised stencil on this natural wood. And I wanted to do this because, believe it or not, when I have done raised stencils in the past and then I paint over them, I have people, even my best friend is one of them, who are like, I really like the stencil before you painted over it. So for all of yous who have commented, and Randy, if you're watching, this DIY is for you. And the best part about this is you can create the raised stencil in any color you want. I just used black. I wanted to keep this really neutral. I was gonna go gray, but I'm like, nah, let's live a little. And it's so amazing. This might actually be one of my favorite raised stencil looks. Let me know what you think. I know I keep saying this, but I'm going to say it again. Did you guys think I was running out of palette ideas? Because in case you did, I'm here to prove you wrong again. You're going to need decent sized popsicle sticks. And here I'm rolling with my cutters, my wire cutters I purchased from Hobby Lobby. I cut them down just, I don't know, about 2 inches. We're going to use 3 pieces of them here because we're going to make a vintage looking decoupage type flag. And I didn't have any paint color that I wanted for the little flag part where the little stars go. So I kind of just mixed some paints together until I got this blue color because I was really going for like an older look. These papers are all from Hobby Lobby. You can use whatever papers you want, but this is what I'm using for mine. Cut them in strips equal size to your palette pieces, and then you're going to kind of just cut them in an arrangement that makes them look like their own individual pieces of wood. Use Mod Podge to put them on there, and also go over them again with more Mod Podge once they are on there, so that way this paper's not going anywhere. You ain't got to worry about it. It's stuck on that palette. And I didn't show this online, but I also or on the video online, I also took a little tumbling block and glued to the back so this would sit up evenly and I wouldn't have to worry about it wobbling and shaking. We're going to use this We the People to go in our little flag spot. I love it. These right here are the perfect size to make coasters. We're going to make a set using some of Dollar Tree's transfers and some of TDS transfers. If you're ever looking for something to keep your coasters in, Dollar Tree has these wood slat crates that are the perfect size to house 4 pieces, which is typically what a set of coasters is sold with. But for today, we're just going to make a set of 2. I don't know about you, but I'm always switching out my coasters, whether I'm using towel or wood, and these are always perfect to remix depending on your mood, really. You could make these every day if you got them sitting in your stash. I love the fact that transfers are a unique way for you to mix and match the different brands and get cool creative looks for really whatever your style is that day. There are a bunch of different ways you can finish off your coasters. I keep these little soft touch circle pieces that I pick up from Home Depot in my stash. I also use the cork from Dollar Tree. I will cut them down to size. These are perfect for the bottom of these Dollar Tree pallets. Just put 4 in each corner, and they really help to not scratch your surfaces on whatever you're putting your little coasters on. To protect our transfers, I'm just going to use some dishwasher safe Mod Podge and put a nice layer over top of these transfers. Another creative way to create some coasters is to use a stencil. And I'm going to be using my TDS stencils for this. Feel free to use whatever stencils you would like. I'm just going to take out the second piece. This stencil set has 2 different stencils, a total of 12 stencils, and cut down one that fits perfectly over top of these little wood pallets. Then I'm just taking a little dry brush with some Tuscan red paint and plopping the stencil right on here. The cool thing I love about stencils is you can really create your own designs and take little sections of the stencil, making more accents as you go. You don't actually have to use the entire stencil to create a design if you don't want to. For the sealer, I'm just going to use some dishwasher safe Mod Podge. Feel free to use whatever you would like. On the bottom, I am going to use some of Dollar Tree's adhesive cork. This stuff is great to cut down in sections. You get a lot for $1.25. and it really helps protect your surfaces whenever you're creating coasters. If you ever question whether or not this adhesive is going to stick onto what you're putting them onto, take a little bit of tacky glue on a paintbrush and just paint around the edges. I've done that on towels, I've done that on glass pieces, and I've done that on wood pieces. It's a really great way to ensure that adhesive sticks and protects your surface. This is my first time seeing these larger craft wood pieces at Dollar Tree. I picked up 2 of them because I feel like they're the perfect size for this pallet shelf I want to build. However, people, they are really rough around the edges. I took my little sander and just knocked all the stuff off around the top and the edges. We want it nice and smooth because we're going to be decoupaging this beautiful napkin onto the top of both of these pieces. They're going to be our actual shelf pieces. So that's what we're going to see is the design of this beautiful napkin. Plus, I love how this napkin has just like a whole kind of different design going on throughout the whole thing. There's lots of use here. If you've never decoupaged a napkin before, a good tip is to always remember to remove the sneaky layers off the bottom. You're just going to want to use the top decorative layer on your decoupage. I like to just tear a corner. Most of the time it shows me those sneaky layers. It's quick and I just pull the whole piece completely apart. And this is not the only way to do this. There are several different ways. This is just what works best for me. I decided to cut the napkin in half so I had equal portions to use our Mod Podge to decoupage onto the pieces of wood. And real quick, I want to share with y'all something to help you maybe save some money. I go through these all the time. And if you go into the stores, sometimes they're pretty expensive. However, if you have a Ross local to you, I don't know if you know, but they have craft sections and you can get sets like this pretty inexpensively. I want to do the iron-on method to these boards, and people, one thing that grosses me out while I'm crafting is Mod Podge boogers. Ew. Ew. What is come on. Hey. Ew. Get out. Oh. It won't come out. I can't even stand it. I started gagging trying to edit that. That was all I could do. I'm sorry. The editing could have been better there, but that was all I had. I can't rewatch that section. You're going to want to take your Mod Podge without the boogers and make sure there is a nice, healthy layer all over the top of your boards, especially whenever you're going to do the iron-on method. You want to make sure that when you're all done putting your layer on, it's heavy and thick all over the piece. The worst part about this is it normally takes a couple hours for it to completely dry, and I like to allow mine to dry at room temperature. But while that's drying, it's always good to make the most of our time, so I grabbed the little wood pallets and my little spritzer bottle and gave them a couple little squirts, and then took some black chalk paint and applied a layer. You'll notice that I left one piece of the palette completely unpainted, and that's because we're gonna cut that sucker off using our miter shears. And people, honestly, cut it off with whatever works best for you. I just keep these right next to me, and I know that I can get up pretty close to the pallets. We only need the first 3 of each palette, so we can put on the side of our shelf that we're creating. When I was done trimming them down, I took a little bit of that black paint and went over anything that needed some touch-ups. While they're drying, it is time to bring on in the irons so we can iron on our beautiful napkin to these pieces that are finally dry. Once you have your napkin in the exact spot that you want it, grab you some parchment paper so you can apply over top of the napkin while you're doing your iron on. This is going to protect the napkin and protect your iron all at the same time and allow you to get a nice smooth finish. And then just work from one side to the next. Before you go sanding anything off, check all your edges, making sure that that napkin is butterly melted onto the Mod Podge and the top of that wood. And people, just in case you forget to check a section or whatever, it's a good idea to get in the habit of when you're sanding off stuff like this to go straight down. So this way it just disconnects your piece. If you go back and forth, it's possible it can shred it. I'm taking some of the same black paint and trimming all around the edge where the napkin is not. When everything was completely dry, I grabbed my current favorite wood glue and my hot glue and started attaching everything. Now, how you attach it is completely up to you. I decided that I wanted to start by assembling the pallets together, just so this way when I put them on the sides of our shelving unit, that they were kind of already together with a slight hold. So I could reinforce with more wood glue and more hot glue as I assembled everything together at one time. If you want, and I showed you right here, you can add a little bit more wood glue and hot glue and put a tumbling block at the bottom just for a little bit of extra reinforcement. And feel free, people, I know I didn't paint the underside. Make sure you paint yours if you want to. For the sake of time, I did not. After I was able to get the two shelves in place on the pallets, I then took the other pallet that I put together, the other little set, and put all the glue in the sections I wanted to put it on at one time. So this way I could just put that on the other side at one time instead of trying to do piece by piece. Dollar Tree had these little wood blocks and I thought these would be perfect for a hanging shelf with some pallets. We're gonna need 2 pallets for this particular project. If you want to make a set, you'll need 4 plus one of these little guys, which is really just like an extra bit that was cut off from previous pallets in my stash. So I can attach the pallets together. I'm just gonna cut a popsicle stick in half and use a little bit of Type-On quick and thick wood glue and some hot glue right in the center of where these two meet. Then I took a little bit of that wood glue and that hot glue and put it on the edge of our wood block and attached the pallets. If you want to attach a clamp to this and let it set for like 30 minutes, you go right ahead. For the sake of time, I did not and just kept on rolling with the project. I also attached our little fence piece right to the front and then brought in a stencil with some painter's tape to just tappity tap 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 a little bit of black chalk paint right onto the top of this with a makeup sponge for a little extra design on our piece. I did the same thing right to the front on the opposite side. When your piece is all dry, if you want to add some sealer over it, you go right ahead. This large pallet wall hanging shelf, we're going to need to grab 2 of these Dollar Tree hanging home signs and 3 of the smaller Dollar Tree wood pallets. And people, truth be told, if I could have found the blank long wood hanging pieces, I would have bought those joints, but shoulda, woulda, coulda. We grabbed these. Here's my 3 pallets. And now let's start disassembling things to be able to reassemble some things. Taking these things apart really is not, it's not the funnest job. I've done enough Dollar Tree DIYs and crafts over the years to know 2 things. 1, a project like this, you're going to need at least 2 pieces so it's kind of sturdy and doesn't make you feel like it's going to fall apart. And 2, I hate covering up the back of these wall plaques, whatever you want to call them. So we're gonna glue the fronts together so this way they're blank on both sides, making it 1, sturdy, and 2, if you go to resell it or if you hang it in the house, people aren't going to know that it's a Dollar Tree piece. And I know a lot of people, and I've even done it, I don't know how many times, put the blank brown paper on the back, cover it up, all those things. It is just an extra step I don't want to do. I don't want to cut out the paper. I don't want to glue it down. I don't want to check the sides to see if it starts peeling back. I don't want to do none of it. So this just cuts a whole extra step out for me. Once it was glued, I clamped it down and then let it dry. When I was able to pop those clamps off, I grabbed me a paint color and gave this a coat of paint. Now, if you want, you could absolutely paint the whole thing. But the beauty part about doing this is if you want to leave the back blank, just leave it blank. Since I'm making a shelf out of it, that's exactly what I'm going to do. But I know most of you crafters at home would take this opportunity to make double-sided decor so we can switch it around. And I don't really blame you. We're going to need to make sure we allow all of the paint to completely dry before we carry on to the next step, because we're going to be gluing and drilling. It really depends on how you want to situate your shelves on here. I will tell you the best and sturdiest way is going to take a little drill bit, pop a hole in the back of your pallets, and then put a little screw in there. And the way this is built and constructed, you can absolutely do that. For time's sake, I just use my wood glue and my hot glue, and you'll see at the end for the reveal, it's definitely sturdy enough after letting everything dry for 24 hours to put a little pot on there with a heavy little ceramic piece. And you'll actually be surprised at how heavy this piece is when you're holding it. So it's pretty sturdy. If you're happy with your piece, leave it alone. I'm gonna add a little dazzling on here with one of my TDS stencils, and I'm not going to use the whole thing. I really just want to use the leafy kind of section and pop this green in here. Absolutely feel free to get as creative as you would like with stenciling. I just wanted the smaller sections, and I used a pouncer, offloaded my paint to try to reduce some of that bleed through, and left this alone. I used a jute twine and wrapped it around several times at the top so it looked nice, thick and sturdy and not cheap, just doing it once. And really love how this palette wall hanging decor piece turned out. I hope all my people watching right now didn't think that I was running out of palette DIY ideas for you, because in case you did, here's an amazing one. You're going to need any kind of base. I'm using a thick painter's stick and cutting it down to size. Of course, it made a mess. And gluing it with some Gorilla Glue and hot glue and just pressing it on here. And in case you're wondering, I used a miter box to cut the painter's stick. Then I'm using the same joint compound mixture to create a little bit of texture on this. Make sure that you seal it before you go to put any stickers or any transfers. I'm using transfers. You're going to also need these little mini jars, and I'm using these transfers from Dollar Tree. So I'm taking the wreath and putting it in the center, and as always, it's always something. Oh man. I was really impatient and didn't wait for the Mod Podge to dry all the way, so it came off, and I just continued to press little pieces with the greenery onto it and rub it. Luckily, it kind of transferred back on there and it wasn't too bad, and then sealed up all the transfers with the Mod Podge before I went on to the next step. Since I'm putting a centerpiece on here, I need something for it to hold on to, so I took some of that metal wire we've been using and just cut a small piece of it and glued it on the back, and then taking this twine and cutting little pieces, wrapping it around the top of these little jars I picked up from Dollar Tree. I know people are always like, what do we do with these? Well, here's what I'm doing with it. And then I'm going to wrap them around the back on each side and then one in the middle, and add some more transfers because I didn't have enough on here to start with. Centerpiece, you're going to need 3 of these palettes, and you can paint them whatever color you want. For this project, I'm going to leave them neutral so they match these little chalkboard houses I grabbed from Dollar Tree. To attach the pieces, I'm going to use my favorite wood glue, and people, this project, it only took me a few minutes. I used the hot glue in opposite sections of where I had the wood glue, and then attached the first piece at the bottom. And then I did the same thing to the sides, and I made sure to flip the pallets so they were backwards and we could see the wood pieces on the sides pop out. To apply the other side of the house, I put glue in all the little spots that I thought that it needed to go, and then attached the piece that I had already put together on top of that and held it in place for a couple of seconds. I really think that you could use this for so many things, but for sake of staging, I just popped some floral foam in here and did my best to arrange some pieces so you guys could see how awesome this piece is. I'm perpetrating like I'm gonna use 4, but 3 of the smaller palettes for this. And I want to just take a second to show you things that you can use to hang up these. I use these little hammer in hangers. These are one of my favorites, and they are down in my Amazon store. They're simple to put in there. They don't require you having to screw anything in, but I wanted to show you because a lot of times when I stage pieces, I use little stick ones or Velcro pieces, and get this little tag over there was distracting me. And I use these Velcro pieces, or I use little sticker pieces to help me with staging. But if you're creating decor for your home, the hammer and hooks are an easy way to be able to hang them on the wall. The idea for this decor piece is super simple. I'm leaving the palettes very neutral, and these I picked up from Dollar Tree, these succulents. And you just pull the back out, and then we're going to use one of these little sticky pieces. So I'm going to show you how to fake it when you're just staging something. So I was low on these smaller palettes, so I'm like, I have 2 ideas. I need the palettes, and let me show my subscribers how, if they want to interchange their stuff and not use glue, how simple this is. So while I'm perpetrating like I have 4 DIYs, I actually do, but I'm going to be able to recycle my products to make the 4th DIY using these same exact palettes, because all I'm doing is sticking these stickers on here, and then look how I can rearrange them and use different florals to decorate my house if I want to. Plus, the neutral color of these palettes is so in right now. You can really take bright colors or dark colors, and you can use succulents or regular florals to create this look and use as many of these palettes as you want. Next project, we're gonna need 4 of the larger palettes, and I'm going to just paint them with some Waverly White and a little bit of water. I like to mix them together. It's a quick and easy way to get the palettes all covered. I've done that in past videos, but I wanna save you your viewing time here. Make sure you let your palettes dry really well, especially if you're gonna glue them together. If not, you know, glue is not going to work well on a damp surface, okay? You don't need me to explain that to you, but if you do, let me know in the comments. I'll have a conversation with you. For the sake of how tiny the space was that I was using to glue these together, I just used hot glue, but I did go over these and paint some wood glue over top of it for a longer hold. I always tell people, do not just use hot glue on your products. If someone is telling you just use the hot glue, that's fine for crafters' sake if you're just like keeping something and you don't care if it falls apart, but hot glue will wear, especially if you leave it in the sun, it will melt. Try and put some E6000 wood glue or some of my favorite Gorilla Glue gel on your products for that long-lasting bond. So this way, if the hot glue on your project is having a bad day, you know, the Gorilla Glue gel has its back and it's going to hold your stuff together. Once you have all your little sides together, you could leave it like this, but I'm going to take this stick. I do not remember if I picked this up from Hobby Lobby or if I got it from Home Depot, but they both sell these little square dowels. Well, it's not little, it's kind of thick actually. And all I'm doing for this part, which is a little tedious, is measuring it to size. So this way I can wrap it around the center to give us a little bit of contrast, add a little bit more of a high-end looking thing. I was trying to take these crafts up a notch to more of looking like a home decor piece you'd pick up somewhere in a store and pay a little bit more money for. I do want to me and these miter shears. So they did the job, but yeah. If you got a miter box, it might be a little bit easier than these with how thick this particular one was. And again, you can do this as thin or as thick as you want, but see me over here using the hot glue just for that quick bond in that one spot. The rest is all wood glue, so I know that these wood pieces are not going to come peeling off of here anytime soon. If you want to bust out a level to make sure that these are exactly in the precise spot as you go around, go right ahead. You know I like to wing things, so that's pretty much what I did here, and I adjusted with each turn. The piece is really universal, and you can honestly use it anywhere in your home to give it a little oomph. And here's our 3 palettes we're going to use for our next DIY, people. I can't. I'm like trying to show you the paint. Like, look at my pretty white and gray weathered look that I accomplished on here. So we're going to need to attach the 3 pieces. I'm going to take a popsicle stick and just cut that in little tiny slivers to do the job. And first I'm using hot glue, and then I'm going over that with some wood glue. Do you need me to remind you of why again? No? Okay, so let's carry on then. Once I did this for this particular project, I let this dry for a little bit, like 30 minutes, just to really give that glue a chance to set in, because we're going to be pressing on these seams a bit with the jute twine and the super glue gel. Now, you can use whatever you want. I'm just using the... Anybody else wonder what the hell, like, why is there always these weird things sticking out of the twine? Like, what is that? Like, why are these crusty bits on my twine? Like, I always question myself, like, why am I purchasing that? Anyhow, sorry, side rant. Take your Gorilla Glue gel and put some little layers in the process of wrapping the twine around. If you're not worried about it, just use your hot glue, whatever makes you fuzzy inside. And then I am going to hammer in these hammer tooth. This is why earlier in the video I was using the stickies. Remember how I said we perpetrating? But now I'm using the hangers so that way we can use this later. Take the twine and you wrap it in your sections, and then I'm taking solo wood flowers. You can use whatever type of flowers you want. I'm using solo wood flowers to just press down in the center here with some hot glue. And then once that dries, I go back in with the Gorilla Glue gel and give it some squirts in some different sections to ensure that these flowers are not popping off my project. And make sure you're being careful.
If you think that you got it, hands up, put your money where your mouth is. If you think that you got it, hands up, put your money where your mouth is.
3 of the long pallets, and make sure you glue them together and then you let this sit. Using a tumbling block because this is going to hang on the wall, and I want a brace away from the wall. I don't want pallets to just lean on the wall. So the tumbling blocks are thick enough that allow you a little pop out because they will hit the wall versus the pallets. And then I'm taking just a couple little tumbling blocks that I have stragglers laying around to kind of prop it up. And then I'm taking different color paints to give this a very vibrant, weathered look, and making sure that I'm drying in between rotating the colors. A lot of times I skip the painting, and some people complain about that and other people love it. And for stuff like this, because I'm using certain colors, I like to show you exactly what I'm doing and how I'm doing it, so you at home, because you know I'm showing you how to do it, can recreate that. So when I'm doing something like this, I'm purposefully placing the paint. It is not just a smear tactic. I'm not trying to smear anything. I am purposefully placing the paint and overlapping the paint very deliberately, making sure it's dry. Then I'm taking a crusty bit paintbrush and I'm putting some chalk paint on it and scraping it so we get a heavy amount off so we can give this a nice dry brushing. This is a little dry brushing hack that I've discovered recently that I'm in love with, and it allows me to just kind of go over and give the project a nice natural looking finish quickly. It doesn't take long at all. Then I had this trim laying around that I picked up from Home Depot, and I measured it to size. This, my people, is where I love these miter shears. Look at this baby. Look how precise and delicious that cut looks. And let me just tell you something. If I had to hand saw this with that miter box, I would throw that sucker across my patio because I would be so frustrated. And these miter shears made it all so simple. Now, I gotta thank Angela Jones DIY and Crafty Kathy for this whole let me grab a tin can and make a tin can project. I seen Crafty Kathy do some pretty amazing projects, and Angela Jones like, oh, you know, they're in right now. And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go get me a tin can. So I got a tin can, and I'm like, oh, I don't want to do what everybody else is doing. They're pinching the can, and, you know, they're beautiful, but, you know, I got to be different if I'm going to give y'all an idea. So I'm like, let me cut the can in half and use these wire cutters. And 10 minutes later, I'm cussing Crafty Kathy out and wishing Angela wasn't my friend anymore. Like, why did I listen to them? But anyhow, it's beautiful. This project turned out amazing. I'm glad I did it. I used some chalk paint to just give it one coat and let that dry. And then I'm making myself a little hanger, taking several pieces of twine, and then using my nail gun or staple gun the proper way, okay, made sure it was the right way, and stapled them, and then I twirled the twine all the way to the other side to give it a cute little look, and then stapled it down on the other side, so we had ourselves a nice little hanger. And then I'm gonna take this Easter napkin that I do have for sale in my Easter kit on my website. The link is down in the description box, but I'm just using the little floral piece in the egg. I'm not using the whole egg. And taking a gloss, I know we're using gloss, gloss Mod Podge, not a matte, and putting the napkin pieces I cut into sections on here. And no, you're not going to see me bringing the sponge either, because I'm not worried if this is perfect or has seams or if it's wrinkly. It did not matter. We're making this look like an old tin can that is just super cute with some, you know, character. And I gotta tell you, I wouldn't mind doing a whole tin can like this either, not just the half a tin can, but for this project it made sense just to do the half. Or if you like that pinched looking can, go ahead and make that pinch sucker. That would look really cute on here too. Put a little rope on there so it hangs, or, you know, some embellishments. However, this is just a cute idea. I am taking some paints and just kind of blending the piece in, and then I'm getting to use for the first time. I just recently got these in a Dollar Tree browsing video, but I did want to show you, if you don't have a stamper, you can use anything like, you know, the top of this Waverly can. Put your stamp on here and it just stays. And then you can stamp it on whatever without having to buy the extra pieces. I do have mine. I just was lazy and didn't know where the hell it was and didn't want to take the time to go find it while I was trying to film. Also, not every piece pressed on there perfect, so I took a dotting pen and filled it in. For these next several projects, we're going to be using some trays to mass stain our palettes several different colors. This always works really well for me when I'm doing a multitude of palette projects at one time. I used about 2 tablespoons of paint in each tray, and then I put on some gloves because we're going to get a little messy. We're also going to need this paper plate with these napkins. We're going to need more than this because I think I used more palettes than is in this box. Anyhow, all I'm doing for this is just submerging these palettes in these little trays with the stain. Do not keep them in there very long. You don't want the wood to warp. If it's not enough on there, just smush my hand around the bottom, collecting a little bit more of the paint that is not stirred in and rubbing it all over the palettes. It gets in all the nooks and crannies. It's very quick. I did a ton of these in like 10 minutes. Some of them did not have as much stain as I would have liked, so I just took a paintbrush, smushed it around the bottom, and then went over them. And just to give you an idea, this is the first load, and they're drying. I'm starting off with this cute little number. I think this is just a darling little piece. I'm using this stencil from Walmart, and we're just going to use this little, I guess it's a, we're just going to call it a flower because I want to call it a sunflower, and I know it's not, but we're just going to call it a flower. And I usually use one of those dry brushes to do my stencils, but I'm going to use these makeup sponges with these 3 colors. And the reason I'm doing the makeup sponge and I'm not doing my dry brush technique that I love doing is because these stencils do not stick very well. So I need to press down as I go, and I am fading the stencil in, so it's kind of a very intricate thing, and that's what these makeup brushes are really good for, is blending. So to give it more of a layered look with some highlights, I'm just taking some darker colors and going around some of the edges. You really can use whichever stencils you want that will match with your decor. I just like this little thing and it's so pretty. For the beads, I used the same technique with the water, just swished them around and then put them on this dowel. My girl Erica over at DIY with Erica, I'll link her down below. I was watching her video the other day. She lets her beads dry the same way. I had a little chuckle at it. We talked about that. Anyhow, hi girl, hey. Okay, so I use Gorilla Glue and hot glue to get all my stuff. You guys are going to see this going on. Gorilla Glue, hot glue, and some wood glue. And then I'm just taking some Mod Podge and finishing this off. You're gonna need some cloth, you're gonna need some gloves, some tape, and whatever colors you want to use, plus some water and a plate. I started this off by using washi tape to really just, there was no method to my madness here. And any little gaps, I folded over some extra tape to kind of make it rounded. I did not want it sharp. I didn't want sharp edges. I wanted it kind of rounded. And I made sure to the direction I planned on painting it, I put the next layer underneath. So when I removed the top layer, the next layer was not affected by any bleeding. So it's a good little technique. I've made a lot of mistakes trying this. Now you could, I was running out of bowls. We're running out of bowls. I didn't feel like going to the store. I'm like, we're going to figure out a way around this. So I dabbed the little cloth. I dabbed the cloth in the water and then we put it in the paint. And as long as you make sure that by the time you get to that edge area, your little cloth with your paint stain is dry, it's not going to bleed. See that? However, if your little cloth is soaking wet with paint stain, it's going to bleed all into the next color. So just be mindful when you're doing that. If you're looking for a little more detail with that, in my farmhouse video I posted, I'll put down below, I go into a little bit more detail with that. I plan on hanging this on the wall, so I have these little hangers and I just hammered them in there, and then we're going to use this tight bond wood glue. The rest of the video you're going to see it probably everywhere, and use popsicle sticks and hot glue to put, and of course I'm struggling with the hot glue. Like, it never works when I want it to, and then I gotta stick stuff in there because it's all clumpy. I don't know what my problem is with it. My struggles. Before I added the florals to this, I just put some Mod Podge on here. You can use whatever Mod Podge you want. I just used a matte. These little stickers I picked up at Dollar Tree, more florals from Michael's, and that little white stick of stuff over there, I don't really have a name for what that is from Walmart. And then I just kind of pieced this in here however I thought it looked. Let me know in the comments below if you guys would have did something different with this. I really like, I think I would have added some more. I think later I did add some more later. It, more wood glue and more hot glue, and we are alternating these little pallets as we go, so that way there will be like a little square in the center when you are done. And then on the back I'm taking more wood glue and more hot glue and taking popsicle sticks, and I let this dry for about 30 minutes before I started putting on the stencil in the front. These are just large wood beads. I can link down below in the pack that I purchased from Amazon. And then I'm using the Gorilla Glue. It has a 10-second bond time. It might take a little bit longer than 10 seconds, but ideally it's good enough that when I'm about to drop it right here, not a bead came off. Not a bead came off. Yes, I had hot glue on there, people. Okay. I'm not giving all the credit to the Gorilla Glue. Anyhow. These little designs were very tribal, boho, Aztec to me. I really was trying to create something different throughout this entire video for everyone. So there was something for everyone, some farmhouse, some color, some springy, some just all around everything, and hope that everyone that's watching is enjoying and likes the different styles. I like to give people options. Take these DIYs and remix them however you want to match up with whatever you got. Blue. I love how this turned out. I made this for my mama. My mama's favorite color is blue. This, if you have not seen my Valentine's video, I do a similar technique with a completely different design. I put some styrofoam in the bottom. It helps me put floral in there. And in case you guys are like, Gorilla Glue constantly brandy for real, if you have not seen my Try It Tuesday, I'll link that down below, where I am beating some stuff up with a hammer. That Gorilla Glue, it's a beast. You'll see me use it. So really just taking the twine and overlapping it, making it look kind of twisty to kind of give it just a little bit of a design with this twine. And then I made a knot in 3 pieces, and I'm going to make a fake, I call it a fake bow, because really I'm not tying it, I'm just kind of gluing it, and then I'm going to hide it with a flower. So I'm gluing this down on here. And then, of course, more hot glue. What I tell you guys, hot glue. And in case you're like, why are you doing both? Because if it gets hot out and you only have hot glue, guess what? If that's sitting in the sun or on a porch, it's going to melt. Your whole thing. It's going to melt right off. Sorry, it's what happens with the hot glue. Then I got these little flowers from Michael's, and I'll see if I can link them down below for you. And I'm not sure where these other flowers are from. I plucked them from my stash. For this DIY, I am always telling my kids that only they are responsible for their happiness, and that starts with them. So I really wanted to model this. So I used some joint compound to create a texture on this little tiny pot I picked up from Michael's. And I just mixed some chalk paint in a brown with that, and smushed it all around to create a texture with the glove. You could take a paintbrush as well to give it a little bit more if you want. I would be happy to do an entire video with texture techniques with the joint compound. If you're interested, just comment below. For this part, I wanted to show you guys exactly how amazing these little clippers are, so I just filmed me snipping them off for you. I usually struggle with the popsicle sticks, cutting them with things. They'll kind of get brittle and snap, but these are beautiful. This works so great. Using a Cricut. If you don't have a Cricut, you can get stickers or you can do stencils. They will all work. I should have done it because this was a nightmare. You guys, people, let me explain something to you. Me and this Cricut have a love-hate relationship, and I was about ready to rip my hair out today. I don't know if it was lettering. It definitely was not the painter's tape. It came off. The weeding was fine. This is where I went wrong. If you're going to do this, and if you're going to put any, going forward, take my advice. If you're going to put any type of stencil or even stickers like this with lettering on anything painted, put a layer of Mod Podge on it. Do you see how it's not sticking? Do you see all that paint on the back of there? It's coming off with the transfer. I should have put a layer of Mod Podge on it. So I couldn't do nothing about it. I was already in it. It took me an hour to put that little thing on there. I'm done being bitter. Done being salty about it. Onto the pot. I then just dry brushed a little bit of black on there, and we're going to use some black floral wire so it all blends in, and I'm just pressing it around the pots. Next, I'm just twisting it in the back so it kind of moves in and out, so that way if I want to change the floral or whatever's in this pot I can. And then I'm going to just shove it through the center gap in this little palette, and then I'm going to press one up and one down, and I'm going to glue it in place with the Gorilla Glue and the hot glue, and want to let that dry for like 5 minutes before you start doing anything else. For my little hanger, I'm just braiding some jute twine. I'm taking it back to the old school of the 90s when you used to just sit on your stoop and braid some bracelets. We used to make them all the time. Love doing that stuff. And then I, of course, put this on the back using Gorilla Glue, and I'm having a really bad time with this one. DIY, and the last one is really what got this whole video started. I seen these shelves at Walmart for $14 and I'm like, I might want more than one. I think I can make them cheaper. So I purchased these pallets, and I'm taking more popsicle sticks, and I'm actually using these metal cutters to cut them. It works amazing. Now you see how there's not one there? That's because that's going to be like where we're looking, and I don't want anybody to see a popsicle stick there, so I left that blank. And then you're just going to take a drill bit and drill a hole in each corner. I think I need a new drill bit. I'll be back. I am a huge Ryobi person, so most of my tools consist of that. Once I got the new drill bit on there, it went right through, and I did that on each corner. Then I took white jute twine or white twine, and I took 4 pieces, cut it, used some painter's tape. I use painter's tape a lot. I love painter's tape. And then shoved a big bead through the hole, and I did the same thing at the end of each one of these 4 pieces, and then shoved it. Now you don't want a huge hole because you really want this to be tight, so when you do your knot, it's not going anywhere even when you put a little bit of weight. If you're struggling to pull it through, just take a pair of needle nose pliers and pull it the rest of the way. All I did on the ends of these to kind of finalize it is just create knots where the beads were. I hung it up on the wall and kind of made sure it was all sturdy, and then started putting my knots, and I did it one at a time, and I did a double knot on each of them. I have been wanting one of these style shelves for a while. I've seen them online and they're rather expensive. So I'm like, I think I can make this cheaper. And I did for $10. 10 pallets, $10. This was such a unique little way to arrange these. You can really, whatever style you want to arrange these. I also chose larger popsicle sticks. These were the largest ones I had, and put them at each intersection where there was a lot of splits, and put wood glue and hot glue. And in between, I used the smaller popsicle sticks, except for on the edge. I did not put them on the very edge, so if people look at this from the side, they don't see a popsicle sticks hanging out from the side. And then I took some black and added it around the edges to give it a dry brush. And I really love this. I did the same thing with these little shelves. These are our shelves, and just added a little bit of that dry brushing on there to give it an extra little fabulous look. I really like it. Anyhow, and then use the wood glue and the hot glue to put these on where I wanted them. You can put these wherever you want them. This assorted wooden dowels I picked up, I think I got them from Walmart. I think maybe Hobby Lobby. I'm using a square one to put underneath to kind of give it a little bit of a brace, and I'm doing that for each one. I made sure to paint it the same color so it just kind of blends in. You can't even notice that they're there. And that's it. going to need 3 of these larger pallets, and then we're going to just flip them over on their back and glue them together long ways. You can really use whatever you want to glue the piece. I am going to take a popsicle stick and cut it into little sections so I can take some wood glue and some staples and staple into the top of them through the back, so this way we just have a really good tight bond for our piece. If you want to use hot glue, you go right ahead. I do a lot of reselling with my projects. I am a vendor at a local market and I sell things on my website, and I want to make sure that the pieces I make for anyone last for a long time, and I have really good luck with the wood glue or E6000 or Gorilla Glue gel and putting staples into things. It just helps give you that longevity with your projects. For our hanger, I'm just using a piece of nautical rope that I picked up from Dollar Tree, and I'm going to put a little bit of tacky glue and some staples on here. I know you're like, Brandy, you tell us not to bring up tacky glue and then you bring it up. But I like using tacky glue when I'm using fabric. It just works really well, and it also helps because I'm not in a hurry to use this once I got the staples in there, so it gives the tacky glue time to dry, because usually it takes a good day for it to fully set. At least that's been my experience. Don't attack me in the comments. For our next piece, we're gonna just take a piece of burlap fabric and I'm just gonna fray around the edges. We want this to look old and worn and rustic, and I'm taking some more tacky glue and putting it on there, and then I'm coming in with the staple gun and stapling it. Well, if I had some staple. I'm always running out of staples or nails or something. This is just going to help make sure that fabric's not going to peel off later once we put our little Farm Fresh sign. This is a little laser piece that I picked up, and I am just going to glue it on top of the fabric with our Gorilla Glue gel and just spread it out like that. And then I'm going to take some Dollar Tree clamps and just clamp that down for about a minute or 2. That glue sets really fast, so we won't have to leave it on there very long. Next, we're taking this beautiful galvanized heart, and these metal cutting shears I picked up from Hobby Lobby, and this beautiful heart was sent to me in a care package box by one of my subscribers, Ginger. Thank you so, so much. This is what I'm doing to your beautiful heart. We're going to rip it up. Okay. I'm just kidding. Okay, so we kind of are cutting it up, and we're going to cut it down into some little square pieces. And I did have some tags or like flat pieces I could use, but I wanted the, I guess is beveled, right? Uneven look of it. And then I'm taking some more of that Gorilla Glue gel, and then I'm just going to put the clamps down on here as well. You can put whatever you want over these little pieces. I just love how this turned out. For our last project, you'll need 3 of the large pallets, and we're going to want to attach them. I use the wood glue and the staples. Let this dry 24 hours, well, overnight. I let all these projects dry overnight before actually beginning on the projects, just to make sure they didn't fall apart while I was working on them. And I'm using the same paints to accomplish the same style of weathered look. Aren't you guys proud of me? I kept it pretty cohesive this video. Taking some twine, and we're going to attach our hanger, because yes, we're gonna create another wall decor piece. And I'm running out of staples again. Okay, so you may think to yourself like, Brainy, this looks a little familiar. I feel like you've done this style, and I kind of have. Do you remember the tin piece that I have? I'll pop that up here for you. Aww. I know, you guys are so nice. It's such a nice piece. Anyhow, we're taking that idea and recycling it into a bucket wall decor piece. And we're going to start off by using a piece of fabric. You can use whatever fabric. I'm using burlap here. And I stapled the bottom together. If you want to overlap it to the next side, you go right ahead. Or like the back side. I did not. I wanted mine at the bottom, so this way the bottom of mine would be tight. And we're gonna cover that up. You'll see it in a moment. And then I'm taking more of the tacky glue and staples to attach these sides to the back of our palette. Using E6000 or Gorilla Glue gel here would probably be fine. Listen, if you want to use hot glue too, you go right ahead. But for me, I just felt like this is going to have the best outcome. This is going up for sale in my vendor space, so I wanted to make sure that the piece was going to hold together. And here is our little pocket. See how it's really loose at the top and then it's kind of tight at the bottom? I just love how cute this turned out. To hide the staples at the bottom and around the sides, I'm taking some of this Dollar Tree burlap lace, applying a hefty amount of the tacky glue over top of the staple area and the sides, and then I'm just pressing this right on top of there. It's going to dry clear, so don't even sweat it. You are going to want to let this dry for at least an hour before you carry on doing anything else. And I took the sides, put a little bit of tacky glue on the sides, and then tucked in the excess fabric. This way you don't have unfinished looking ribbon sticking out the top or cut off right at the end of the top. It looks nice and finished. To add a little something extra, we're going to take the stencil I have in my collection and put a little stencil in here. Now you can leave your however, add whatever, but I wanted to add a very blended type of stencil, so we're gonna bring out the foam brush. And then I'm just gonna nip the tip off so it's kind of flat so I can pounce it. Now I am out of pouncers, I'm out of makeup sponges, and I'm just trying to save a penny or two. So that's what I'm using. I am taking these two colors and just going to blend them on up. Like I said, I am not trying to create a stencil that really pops out. I want a blended stencil, something that you're kind of like, ooh, what is that? There's some type of decoration on there. It's not overpowering the pretty weathered look. If you want a more dominant stencil, you go for a dominant color. I am going to add a little bit of black on here just to have some edges pop out. And that's going to be it for our last project, people. To create this piece, you'll need a palette from Dollar Tree, some floral wire, and some of these decorative styrofoam glitter balls. Next, I am using some Waverly white chalk paint. I'm sorry, my dog is going off in the background. Harley is having a ball this morning. I pour this, usually I have a bigger tin, and sorry about the dog hair. I usually have a bigger tin and put these in. I know you guys are probably like, what is this, Brandy? But it really is an easy way to paint this. It takes like 2 minutes to just mix the paint with some water and pour it over there, and then use some gloves and just smoosh it all in those little corners, and it's beautiful. Working with floral wire is amazing. I love how flexible this stuff is. I went with a black color to throw some versatility in this little craft and cut 6 pieces to different lengths and use different little techniques to either spiral it up. It would not come off this pencil. Be mindful how tight you're wrapping it, because the struggle with getting this off sometimes. But it's really super movable, and it's just movable. Is that even, it's my word right now. Anyhow, and then I stuck these styrofoam balls on there. You can hot glue them in place if you want to, but if I want to be able to switch it out and maybe use this another time for another DIY, since the little palette is white, it's versatile. And then I take these little styrofoam pieces and just cut them to size and put them in the bottom. This way you have a little base, I guess, to plop these little floral wire pieces into, and it will hold. Sometimes filming doesn't always work out as perfect as I want it. I felt this need a little extra something, so threw those styrofoam hearts in there from Dollar Tree and added I purchased these little 1-inch nails from Home Depot, and this I'm using another Dollar Tree palette, and the white twine is from Walmart. Here I am again with my staining technique. I know you guys are probably like, what is she doing? But the reality of it is, I like to spray paint palettes, and then if I can't spray paint the palettes, I like to use paint and water. It just gets in these little cracks. I feel like it's beautiful. I love this end result. And painting and getting in those little spots can be very tedious. So I just really like this technique. Next, I took this little heart I got from Christmas tree shops. I am local to one. If you do not have one, I'm sorry. But I use this as my template to draw a heart around this piece. And then for a base to hold this in place, I completely recommend this. I used some painter's tape and put over 2 pieces of cardboard on the sides before I started my hammering. You don't want this little palette or anything you're really hammering going flying anywhere, and this is such a smart little thing just to hold it down for you. And then I just hammered them in to place on the template. For real. And then that, make sure you're hammering your nails in far enough that they don't come flying back out your project. This is so beautiful. I even just like the nails. If you do not know how to crochet, I don't know how else to explain this piece, but I call these loose crochet knots, and I'm sure they have another name. Right in the comments below what you call this. But this loose knot is movable. The way you do it, it allows some play in the hole, and for me to tighten it around that, not around the nail, once I get it on there. And you can use smaller twine if you want. This is really thick twine. I mean, maybe not really thick twine, but it's normal size twine, and it's probably big for this project. But I really like how this turned out with the thicker twine and the white versus the brown. And then I just really had no method to this madness and wobbled it all over the place. Next, I took the little end rope, weeded it through or fed it through one of the pallet holes, made sure to wrap it around the nails tightly so that way it didn't look out of place, and hot glued it to the back. We're going to need one of these pallets and a piece of this decorative pine molding from Home Depot. You can pick these pieces up in little 4-foot sizes, but this one I had 8 foot and I cut it down to size. And then we're going to bring in the miter shears. I may complain about these joints a lot, but one thing these are great at is cutting molding at a 45-degree angle and making your DIYs so much easier than having to go use a miter box or, you know, a saw. Look how beautiful that is. And it took me like 2 seconds. Whenever you're creating a frame, and this is really for anything, best way for me to explain this is to measure your corner at the tip of the end and then cut your way in. That's the best way that I can explain that. So this way the ends meet right up in the tip of the corner. See how that's going on in there? And you can really apply this same process for door frames, windows, all the things. You measure the tip of the corner to the end and then work your way in. I also liked it. That's right, your girl does home projects. I know it's been a long time since I made one of those videos, but I'm handy. Okay, anyhow, back to this. Before I glue or nail this down, and really I do this with anything I'm framing, I like to kind of push the pieces together and make sure it all makes sense and trim off if I need to. I always like to overcut because you can trim it down, you can never really bring it back if you cut it off. We're going to use these 4 paint colors throughout our entire video to create our weathered look. I'm only going to show you how to do it one time on this video so I don't waste your viewing time painting constantly with everything. I have done this many times, but I use different colors depending on what look you're going for. For this, you want to make sure you're purposefully placing your different colored paints in different sections on your palette or your piece of wood, whatever you're painting. So this way you're not blending them. You don't want one color to look like it's moving into the next. You want them to have their own dominant sections. And this way they're kind of harsh and abrupt the way that they end. I guess that's the best way I can explain that. Next, you're gonna bring in the crusty bit paintbrush. Or distress, however you want. I'm gonna use this to distress my white paint. Now I'm just taking a little bit of the Waverly's white and I am dry crusty bit brushing the paint all along the palette. I did paint these off camera. I just painted our trim white and we're going to then place them on our palette. I'm leaving a few spots open so this way I can come in and hit this up with some hot glue so we can get an immediate bond on here so I can continue carrying on with my craft. But the wood glue is going to ensure that these do not pop off later. And make sure when you're applying them that they're not overlapping so they don't cancel each other out. If you want to leave your frame and your piece alone at this point, go right ahead, but I gotta be extra sometimes and bring in the Dixie Belle's gilding wax in silver, and I'm just gonna rub that over the edge. It's gonna help these little engravings kind of pop out more with the project. And then I glued some wood flowers in the center, and that's it for this one. If you enjoyed this large Dollar Tree mini wood palette compilation video and are looking for more Dollar Tree inspiration, check out this video right here. And as always, people, thank you all so much for hanging out with me today. And until next time, bye!